this Dr. Cellini character, and why is he not paying off his student loans? I'm just kidding. This is my buddy, Mike Cellini, aka Dr. Cellini, and he's decided not to pay off his student loans after medical school. Now, he's done a lot of reaction videos to Med School Insiders content like So You Want to Be, and I messaged him earlier today saying, hey man, it's my turn, I'm gonna react to one of your videos. I did things the opposite way in that I paid off my student loans lump sum, one payment, bam, vanished, and he's choosing to do the opposite. So let's dive in, let's explore why he's choosing to do that. I'm gonna tell you what I agree with and disagree with. Now, before we do, for those who are wondering, this is dong. This is medium roast dong ding oolong tea, and it is so good. And if you guys want to get this sweet, sweet merch, it's at merch.medschoolinsiders.com.
Should you invest your money or pay off your loans as fast as possible? Before we come to this decision, we have to take a few steps back and look at the bigger picture. Are all of your other debts paid off? Credit card, cars, etc.? Do you have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund set aside? Do you invest in your retirement?
So right off the bat, he's mentioning the importance of having your financial foundations and fundamentals set. Before I say anything else, this is for informational purposes only. This is not financial or investing advice, okay? I'm just some random YouTuber. So what he's pointing out here is that you wanna have the basics first. It's like a pyramid. You need to get that fundamental layer down first before you start thinking about, okay, should I be investing my money or paying off my student loans? Credit card debt, you should not be carrying a credit card balance month to month. Paying any interest on a credit card is no bueno. The car payment doesn't necessarily have to be paid off. There's a lot of nuance there that I'm not gonna cover right now. But the key thing here is before you start thinking about the top of the pyramid, the advanced techniques, you gotta focus on the fundamentals, the base layer first.
I decided I could use the money other ways to make even more money. Do you have a high interest rate somewhere in the neighborhood of like 6 to 8%? Or did you refinance your loans and have a much lower interest rate like I do now at 3%?
This is the crux of the video. The interest rate and the terms of his student loan is actually a huge part of the decision of whether or not to pay it off early or invest that money into something else.
If you have a student loan interest rate of less than 6%, you may benefit from investing your money rather than paying off your loans.
6%, in my opinion, is a bit high of an interest rate where you would want to invest. I think I would definitely not delay payment of 6%. We'll talk more about that in a second.
The reason being because you will probably get greater than 6% return on your investment. I don't really feel rushed to pay off my loans because it doesn't bother me that much having that student loan burden, but also I don't want to be that person who just puts it off for like 50 years.
What's going on here is on one end, you're looking at the mathematically optimal thing to do from a financial perspective, and then the behavioral aspect, because we're humans, we're not perfectly logical. If you want to do the mathematically optimal route, then let's say your student loans are at 6%. And you can invest your money at 6.1%. The mathematically optimal thing would be to actually invest it at 6.1% and save 0.1%. Would anyone actually do that? I hope not, because that's silly. That's wasted energy in paying off your loans, the statements every month, yada, yada, yada. That brings us to the behavioral aspect, which is at what point are you willing to forego a little bit of that mathematically optimal return because you realize there are other costs, namely mental and psychological.
What the heck should I do? What are the pros of paying off your debt as fast as humanly possible? You'll save money on interest for paying off your loans quicker.
Saving money on interest isn't just saving money on interest, it's actually a guaranteed return on your money. Actually, this is a good place to explain why I paid off my loans. My student loans were at 5%. Now, I didn't have 250K. I had around 20,000 in loans from undergrad, and then I had to take another $25,000 or $30,000 for med school because all of my med school tuition was covered and part of my living expenses based on merit-based scholarship that I explain on Med School Insiders. So out of that 50K, I had already paid off 20K, not immediately lump sum, but from the end of med school to that first year of residency, I was making money from YouTube, and I took those proceeds and slowly was chipping away at my college loans. Now, by the time I quit residency, I had roughly 25 to 30K in student loans. I thought,
5%, not too bad.
I can probably invest that money and actually get a higher return on average in the stock market long period of time. However, the thing about paying off your student loans is that it is a guaranteed rate of return. I am guaranteed getting 5% back by paying this off. However, when you go into any investment, whether that's stocks or real estate or crypto, definitely not crypto, crypto is very volatile, but any other investment has risk, and there is no 100% certainty. If you're looking at super low risk, and again, none of this is financial advice, if you're looking at super low risk, things like bonds, you're not getting anywhere near 5%. So that was the key here. It wasn't that I felt like, oh my God, I have debt and I'm so stressed. It essentially came down to, number one, I'm getting a guaranteed rate of return of 5% on my money. And number two, it was kind of nice just not having to worry about statements and setting up automatic payments and, oh, they're transferring to this company and that company and headache.
2, you'll be debt-free. 3, your debt-to-income ratio will drastically reduce. Peace of mind, which for a lot of people, that's all they need. It can take many years to do so, as it's not really necessary if you're working with a loan forgiveness or repayment plan. And furthermore, you won't be able to maximize your interest deductions on your tax returns year after year.
Good point he raises about the deductions on your student loan interest, but you have to keep in mind here that there's a limit on that. I believe it's $2,500 per year, or the amount of interest you paid on your student loans, whichever one is less. And I also believe there's some income limit. If you make too much money, you're not allowed to take that deduction. So I'm not sure what that limit is, but I would guess that if you're an attending physician, you probably cannot take that deduction. I'm not sure about that, but I'm sure one of you guys will correct me if I'm wrong in the comments.
So who the heck is paying off student loans good for then? People who prioritize being debt-free, borrowers with high interest rates, or people planning to purchase a home?
Those are 3 good points. I would say probably less than 6%, right? Because 6% is a pretty high guaranteed rate of return that I would take.
The pros and cons of investing your money. You can get a better rate of return greater than most student loan interest rates. On just investing in the S&P 500, you can see that you can get a pretty high return on your money that could be significantly higher than your interest rate on your student loans.
I primarily do invest in broad market index funds, including the S&P 500. You can actually see my full financial investing breakdown in this video. But the key thing here is that past returns do not predict future performance. So is it likely that the S&P 500 will continue to be greater than 6%? Yeah, it's pretty likely. However, you can't guarantee that. There is a risk. And also, it depends on when you get into the market. Now, I'm not saying you should time the market, because time in the market is better than timing the market. But again, who cares what I say? This is not financial advice. But to give you an example, if you invested a lump sum right at the peak of the dot-com bubble, it would take you 10 plus years to actually break even again. So what you gotta remember is that with any of these investments, they're not guaranteed. And you need to account for that when you're making your decisions.
Investing early may prevent you from working longer and into your older years. When I'm like 65 years old, I do not want to be cranking around studies. Well, maybe I'll do like part-time stuff, but I don't want to be working for my money. I want to be doing it for fun at that age.
Yo, that's the way you do it. Early retirement, financial independence. Maybe you still want to work. I'm going to keep making YouTube videos because it's fun, but you work because you want to, not because you have to. And it's a totally different way of approaching things. But I'm going to add a caveat here, which is that the early retirement, I wouldn't really put under investing pros because, again, there's risk involved, so you don't know if mathematically it will always beat paying off your loans. You don't know if investing is gonna beat your 6% guaranteed rate of return of paying off your loans early, and that's part of the equation. That's part of the risk, the uncertainty.
The cons of investing over paying off your student loans. If you invest too heavily, you may not be able to afford your monthly student loan payment. Investing will not help your debt to income ratio. Investments carry risks. There are no investments without risks.
One other thing I'm gonna add to the cons list is that you miss out on the euphoric release, that feeling of when you just pay off your student loans. I still remember, it was just like 30K, boom, drop, zeroed out, and I was like, this is such an amazing feeling. And it's not just because your student debt balance is now zero, it's the significance and the meaning and the story of how you got to that point. So for me, it was like, hey, I paid my way through college, I paid my way through medical school, and then boom, I started this business, and from the proceeds of this business, I'm gonna take a lump sum and just pay off all those student loans. It was awesome. It was like the culmination of all that hard work finally paying off. Literally.
So who is investing good for? People with low interest rates on their student loans, people enrolled in student loan forgiveness programs, or people who already have investment knowledge. The last thing you want to do with $50,000 laying around without any investment knowledge is to just go gamble it away in the stock market. Imagine if you put it in like Facebook a few weeks ago and you lost like 30 to 40% of your money. It's not good.
Yeah, so there's been a lot more interest in investing in the last 2 years, but things have been on the up and up. And people sometimes forget that, hey, things sometimes go down. You can lose money. That's a lot scarier. It takes a different kind of mental fortitude. So I totally agree with him here. If you don't know what you're doing, then you probably should just pay off your student loans.
Let's talk about what I decided to do. Ultimately, I made my decision based off my own personal financial priorities and options available to me.
It's going to be a very personal decision. There is no right or wrong. It depends on what you value. It depends on your financial situation. So definitely agree with him on that.
Very recently, I was sitting on a nice chunk of money where I could have basically paid off almost 50% of my loans, but instead I decided to keep buying real estate. So the property I purchased cost $84,500 and I put down $21,125 to come up with a grand total of $28,125. I got a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 3% with a monthly payment around $335 a month. Add a little sprinkle of insurance onto that and it brings your total to about $400 per month. month. For this particular house, we rent it out for $11,400 per year. So our monthly cash flow is the $550 per month.
One thing I don't see here is the property tax as well as maintenance of the property, which they usually say is roughly 1% per year, depends on the size of the property. But this is great. So with real estate, you're actually making money the moment you buy the property because you know the price, you know how much you can rent it out for. So when you buy the property, you know what your cash flow is gonna be. Unless you're going for appreciation, where you're holding the property for long term, hoping that it's gonna increase in value when you sell it.
To calculate the ROI on this particular property, we have $6,600, which is our annual return, and we divide that by 28,125 multiplied by 100 gives you 23.5%, which means the return on my investment is 23.5%.
I think the actual rate of return is a bit lower if you include the property tax and the maintenance, but real estate is great, especially for attending positions with high income because of the tax savings, because of things like depreciation. So when you're in a higher income tax bracket, then every deduction you have is a greater tax saving. But one thing he said about it being totally passive with no work, if you're managing your own property, it does take some work. If you're managing it yourself, it's not terrible. It's not a full-time job by any means, but it is way more work than just investing passively in something like an index fund.
The return on my investment is 23.5%, which is significantly higher than my 3% interest rate on my student loans. So now you can see when you do the math why I would do this over paying off my student loans. So I spent $28,125 up front, and it could have gone to my loans, but instead I decided to make a 23.4% return on that money.
He's getting a lot better returns by doing real estate investing rather than paying off his student loans. This is good. This is good.
And when my lender ordered the appraisal on the house, it actually came out at $120,000 and I paid $84,500. I made over $30,000 in equity.
He got a really good deal. Well done.
And that's on top of the 23.4% return that I calculated. So I hope this is kind of clicking now why I decided to go this route rather than using that sum to pay off some of my loans.
I think in this instance with this real estate deal, it makes a lot of sense for him to take that $20-ish thousand and put it towards this deal rather than his student loans. Yeah, well done, Mike. But again, note that this is on a case-by-case basis. So this was a good deal. He took advantage of it, but if he wasn't able to find as good of a deal, then he likely would have paid off his student loans.
Now, there are always things that could come up like, you know, your roof may cave in or something that completely destroys your first year return on your investment, but this is investing. You always have to take those risks and you have to be ready for those risks.
Which is always gonna be risk. This is great. So a couple final thoughts. Number one, refinancing your loans to get a lower rate is awesome and it really changes the calculus. So if you have a 3% student loan rather than a 6%, that's gonna influence whether or not you choose to invest versus pay that off. 3% is pretty low. One thing you can do is actually have your parent as a co-signer. That actually helps reduce the rate further. And one of my buddies from med school actually did this, and he is, I think, below 3% now, which is fantastic. Mike clearly knows what he's doing. It looks like he got a great deal on this home and is investing wisely. And you'll see that a lot of attending physicians love investing in real estate. It's not just because of the tax savings, which are significant, but you also have control over your investment, much more so than just investing in some company in the stock market. If you guys want to see me talk more about real estate in the future, let me know with a comment down below. If there's any other video you want me to react to, you know where to leave those suggestions. Much love, and I'll see you guys in that next one.